The first time Anora Quell was allowed to stand near the Dragon King's ancient beast, it was not as a candidate. It was as proof that nothing lived inside her. The Dragon Court called it an honor because cruelty always wore better clothes when nobles named it tradition. She was given a clean ash-gray gown instead of her usual soot-stained servant dress, a silver cord around her throat instead of a collar, and a black glass lantern heavy enough to bruise both hands. The lantern was cold, though blue fire trembled inside it. Not ordinary fire, absence fire. It burned only when something failed to exist properly. Anora had carried it once before, years ago, when a noble infant was born with scales that vanished at dawn. The lantern had glowed over the cradle. By nightfall, the child's name had been removed from the house tapestry, and by morning, even the mother stopped asking where the baby had gone. That was what the Dragon Court did to inconvenient almost things. It did not kill them first. It convinced the world they had never been whole enough to count. Now Anora stood beneath the vaulted ribs of the Hall of Living Proof, while every great house of Dracaran gathered for the Royal Beast Census. No claiming circle, no trial flame, no ceremony where young nobles called beasts from their blood and received applause. This was colder than that. Older. More dangerous. Once every 7 years, the Dragon Court measured whether the royal dragon still existed strongly enough to protect the kingdom. It was not enough for Dragon King Soren Valcrest to rule. His dragon had to cast weight. Avaroth, last ancient dragon of the Valcrest line, stood chained to no wall and bowed to no priest. He filled the far end of the hall like a mountain that had chosen to breathe. Black silver scales, horned head, wings folded against pillars carved from volcanic glass. His claws rested on the mirrored obsidian floor, but his reflection below him did not match his body above. The reflection lagged, as if some part of the dragon had begun arriving late to the world. No one said that aloud. That was why Anora had been brought. Lord Chancellor Cadron Velis stood beside the royal dais, in robes of smoke-black silk, his long silver hair bound at the nape, his face composed with the careful sorrow of a man about to commit public harm for the sake of order. Bring the null-bearer forward. Not girl. Not servant. Not Anora. Nullbearer. A murmur passed through the nobles as she stepped out from behind the census scribes. They did not laugh this time. Laughter was too warm for what they meant to do. They watched her with clinical interest, as if she were a broken instrument being placed beside a royal relic to prove the instrument was broken. Anora's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. She had been chosen because the court believed she had no beast shadow. Every living dragon blood left a trace under old magic. A heat mark, a smoke, thread, a scale of reflected fire beneath the skin. Anora left none. When she passed mirrors, old glass showed the room behind her before it showed her face. When she stood near Dragonfire, the flames did not lean away or bow. They held still, as if listening for a name no one had spoken correctly. That stillness had followed her all her life. The court called it absence. Anora called it being watched by something too buried to answer. Stand beside the royal dragon's shadow, Cadron ordered. Avaroth's golden eye opened. The hall changed. Not loudly, not dramatically. One moment the nobles were breathing as nobles did, as if the air belonged to them. The next, every inhale became smaller. The dragon did not move his head. He did not growl. He simply looked across the hall, past the censors, past the scribes, past the highborn heirs, waiting to see whether their king's beast would be certified strong enough to keep their borders safe. He looked at Anora. The lantern in her hands went out. For the first time since she had touched it, absence fire died. Cadron noticed. So did Soren Valcrest. The Dragon King sat on a narrow throne of black iron, crowned not with gold but with a ring of dark flame burning above his brow. He wore black-scale armor without jewels, because men who ruled with dragons did not need decoration to frighten a room. His hair was dark, his jaw hard, his eyes the same severe gold as Avaroth's, but colder king's gold, trained to reveal nothing, until the lantern died. Soren's gazikut to Anora. Something passed over his face so quickly most of the court missed it. Bine, not recognition. Pain before recognition could find its name. Cadron's hand tightened around the census staff. The lantern failed because the bearer is unweighted. Replace it. Anora looked at him. It has never failed before. The hall went silent. Servants could answer instructions. They were not supposed to correct definitions. Cadron's smile did not reach his eyes. A thing with no measure should not lecture the court on instruments of measure. The words landed cleanly. No measure. That was worse than beastless. Beastless meant lack. No measure meant she could stand in a room, and the law would find no reason to remember her. Anora swallowed the hurt before it could reach her face. She had learned early that nobles enjoyed pain less when it refused to perform for them. Soren leaned forward slightly. What is her name? Cadron answered before Anora could. Anora Quell, remnant of the Quell borderline, kept in palace service under mercy clause. Mercy, Anora said quietly, is a strange word for ownership. Avaroth exhaled. Silver ash fell from his mouth. Not smoke. Ash. The nearest nobles stepped back. Zornrose. The dark flame above his crown flickered hard enough to cast shadows across his face. Again, he said to Cadron, light the lantern. Cadron hesitated. That hesitation frightened Anora more than the insult had. A court confident in its truth did not hesitate before proof. A scribe brought a coal from the census brazier. Cadron touched it to the lantern's black glass mouth. Blue absence fire flared alive. Walk, Cadron ordered Anora. Where? Out of the dragon's shadow. Anora understood then. She was not there to be tested. She was there to be subtracted. If the royal dragon's measure strengthened once the beastless girl left his shadow, the court would record her as contamination. Her family name would be blamed again. The Quell line would be erased more deeply. Soren's dragon would be certified. Cadron would preserve order with one servant girl's disappearance from the record. Anora looked toward the Dragon King. He said nothing. His silence hurt more because his eyes did not look empty. They looked trapped behind a door he did not know how to open. Anora lifted the lantern higher, though her wrists trembled. If I have no measure, Chancellor, then my leaving should change nothing. Cadron's expression hardened. Walk. So she did. 1 step. The lantern burned blue. 2 steps. Avaroth's reflection on the obsidian floor blurred. 3 steps. The dragon's left horn dissolved into silver ash. The court finally cried out. Anora stopped breathing. Avaroth did not roar. He lowered his massive head as if the act of remaining real had become painful. Silver ash unraveled from his wings, drifting upward instead of down, vanishing before it touched the floor. Soren came down from the dais so fast the dark flame crown guttered behind him. Stop walking. Anora stopped. Avaroth stabilized. The hall watched in terror as the ash around his wings hung motionless in the air. Cedron whispered, No, not disbelief. Fear. Anora turned slowly, the dead lantern heavy in her hands, and looked from the fading dragon to the king, who now stared at her as if her absence had placed a blade against his heart. Soren's voice was lower when he spoke. Take another step. So even fear made kings curious before it made them kind. Cadron snapped, Your Majesty, silence. The words struck the hall like a thrown spear. Anora should have refused. Instead, because she had spent her life needing to know what harm meant before it swallowed her, she stepped backward, away from Avaroth. The ancient dragon began to vanish. Not weaken, not bleed. Vanish. His chest lost shape first. Then the edge of one wing became silver dust. Then the reflection beneath him disappeared entirely, leaving only an empty space in the obsidian where a dragon's shadow should have been. Anora stumbled. The lantern slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Blue absence fire spilled around her feet, but instead of burning her, it curled toward her like a starving thing, finally finding warmth. Avaroth's golden eye fixed on her, and somewhere beneath Soren Valcrest's guarded face, a forgotten child began to grieve. The dragon spoke only one sentence. It was not spoken to the king. It was spoken to the girl the court had measured as nothing. You were the promise the crown made me forget. The word promise did not make Anora feel chosen. It made her feel stolen. The hall of living proof held still around her, suspended between one impossible sentence and the next. Avaroth's voice had not crowned her. It had not named her powerful, royal, holy, or secretly born for glory. The ancient dragon had looked at a servant girl the court had measured as nothing and spoken as if something had been taken from both of them. You were the promise the crown made me forget. Anora stood among the shards of the broken null lantern, blue absence fire curling around her bare shoes like cold water. The fire did not burn her. That somehow frightened her more. It moved with hunger, but not the hunger of a thing that wanted to consume. It moved like a starving creature recognizing the hand that had once fed it. The nobles recoiled from her, not because she had changed, because their measurement had. Lord Chancellor Cadron Velis stepped forward before panic could turn into questions. His face had already recovered its ceremonial sorrow, but his eyes were too bright. Null contamination, he declared. The bearer has disrupted the census field. The dragon's words are a decay, echo produced by absence, fire contact. Anora looked at him. Decay hecho, contaminación, bearer. Every time truth stood too close to him, Cadron dressed it in a colder name. 2 guards moved toward her. Soren's voice stopped them. No one touch her. The words cut across the hall with enough force to make the blue flames along the pillars bow. The guards froze. The nobles turned toward the Dragon King, startled not by the command, but by how quickly it had left him. Anora did not thank him. She was too tired of men turning harm into protection after they had already let it begin. She looked at Soren across the spilled absence fire. His golden eyes were fixed on Avaroth's fading wing, then on her, then on the ash, gathering in the air between them. He looked less like a king solving a threat than a man standing before a locked door inside his own skull. Anora lifted her chin. Do not use me as proof again. The hall went quieter than before. Soren's face tightened. Cadron seized the moment. Your Majesty, hear her. The null-bearer resists lawful containment. This is not anchoring. This is infection. Avaroth's claws dug into the obsidian floor. The sound rolled through the hall like a mountain cracking. Do not call the absence by the name of disease, the dragon said. Gaidron pallid. Anora felt the absence fire tug at her hem. She looked down. The blue flames had begun to move away from the shattered lantern, thin streams sliding across the obsidian floor, not toward the throne, not toward Avaroth, toward the western wall of the hall, where an old mural had been scraped so thoroughly that only faint scars remained beneath layers of black polish. Anora knew that wall. She had cleaned it since childhood. The servants were told never to ask what image had been removed. The court said it was damaged during a border rebellion. But damaged things had roughness. This wall had intention. Someone had not destroyed the mural in anger. They had erased it carefully, again and again, until even the stone looked ashamed of remembering. The absence fire reached the wall. Silver light burst through the black polish. A noblewoman screamed. The scraped stone began to reveal what had been hidden beneath. First, a dragon. Not Avaroth as he stood now, vast and ancient and terrible, but smaller, younger, his horns not yet crowned in battle scars, his wings folded awkwardly around his body like a creature still learning the weight of himself. Beside him stood a child, a small girl with dark hair, one hand lifted toward the dragon's snout. Between her fingers and the young dragon's chest stretched a thread of silver light. Note a Shane, a promise. Anora forgot to breathe. The child's face was not fully restored, but she knew the tilt of the chin, the shape of the eyes, the stubborn little shoulders of someone trying not to cry in front of something larger than fear. Here, Cadron moved faster than anyone expected. He swept his census staff toward the mural, and black ash flew from its carved head, thick as spilled ink. The ash struck the wall, trying to cover the silver image before the court could understand it. Soren turned on him. Stop. Cadron did not. For the first time, he disobeyed in public. Anora moved before Soren did. She stepped into the blue absence fire. The court gasped, expecting her to vanish, burn, or break into whatever category they had prepared for things with no measure. Instead, the fire rose around her ankles and steadied. Anora reached the wall and pressed one ash-stained hand against the half-covered image of the child. Cold shot through her palm. Not pain. Recognition. The black ash Cadron had thrown peeled away from the mural and turned silver. Avaroth lowered his massive head. The Quell line did not breed dragons, he said. They held memory weight. The words moved through the court like a blade hidden under silk. Anora turned. Memory weight? Avaroth's golden eye softened, and that softness made him more terrible, not less. Ancient dragons are not kept real by blood alone. Blood calls us. Fire feeds us. but memory gives us weight in the world. A promise, witnessed and held, teaches existence where to stand. Soren's hand closed at his side. What promise? Avaroth looked at him. You made it. Soren flinched as if the dragon had struck him. Anora watched the Dragon King try to remember and fail. The failure was not clean. It moved across his face in fragments. Confusion, resistance, pain, then anger at the blank space where something vital should have been. The mural brightened. Young Soren appeared in silver light beside the child Anora. He could not have been more than 9, proud even then, but frightened under the pride. Avaroth lay wounded in the dragon nursery, his body flickering at the edges. Young Anora held the silver thread against his chest while young Soren pressed his bloodied palm over hers. I will not let them erase you, the child Soren said in the memory. If my blood forgets, let her remember for me. Even as a child, he had given her the burden of remembering what blood might choose to forget. The hall did not breathe. Anora's eyes burned. Soren whispered, No, not denial. Grief finding its first word. The memory shifted. A silver blade. Kadrin younger, standing behind royal healers and court scribes, a hand cutting the silver thread from the children's joined palms. Anora screaming without sound as guards pulled her away. Soren collapsing beside Avaroth, eyes open but emptying of recognition. The mural turning black as if night had been painted over the truth. Anora stepped back from the wall. The ache inside her chest changed shape. She had not been born beastless. She had been made unreachable. No beast shadow, no measure, no flame answering her blood. Not because nothing lived inside her, but because the part of her that touched dragon existence had been cut from every instrument the court used to find worth. Soren looked at Kadrin. The hall filled with heat. You cut it. Kadrin's sorrow vanished. What remained was older and colder. I saved the throne from dependence on a border girl. Anora turned toward him slowly. A child. A weakness, Kadrin said. Ancient dragons should not require promises made to servant blood. Avaroth's fading wing shuddered. Silver ash rose again. This time, not from distance, from pain. The mural's silver thread lifted from the wall. It floated through the air, thin and bright, trembling as if it remembered being severed. The nobles stumbled back. Soren reached for it, but the thread passed through his fingers as if he were smoke. It came to Anora. She did not step away. The silver thread circled once around her wrist, then climbed her arm, warm and cold at the same time. It reached her throat and tightened there like a necklace made from a vow that had survived erasure. Avaroth exhaled her name. Soren took one step toward her. Anora. The thread pulled tight. Every mirror in the Hall of Living Proof shattered at once. And in the broken glass, Anora saw dragonfire behind her ribs. Not as a beast, but as a promise trying to become real again. The fire behind Anora's ribs did not feel like power. It felt like something that had been stored there without asking her permission. The broken mirrors of the Hall of Living Proof held her in 100 fractured pieces, and in every shard the same impossible light burned beneath her skin. Not a dragon curled inside her, not wings waiting to unfold, not a beast waking at last to prove the court wrong. Something worse. A portion of Avaroth's existence, hidden inside the place the Dragon Court had trained everyone to call her absence. Dragon blood, someone whispered. A claim. A queen mark. Anora's head snapped toward the nobles. The silver thread around her throat tightened, warm as breath and cold as judgment. It did not choke her, but it reminded her that even miracles became collars when courts found the right name for them. Do not name theft as inheritance, she said. The hall went silent. Soren Valcrest stood several paces away, one hand still lifted where the silver thread had passed through his fingers. He looked at Anora as if every word she spoke placed another missing memory into his chest. Grief had entered him. So had need. Not love. Not yet. Something more dangerous. The need of a king who had just learned his greatest beast had been kept real by a girl he did not remember choosing. Anora saw that need. She stepped back. Avaroth's wing flickered again. Silver ash peeled from the ancient dragon's shoulder and drifted upward into nothing. The great beast lowered his head, and for the first time Anora saw fear in him. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of death. Fear of needing her badly enough that the court might turn that need into another chain. His voice came low, almost broken. Do not bind her to what they cut from me. The words struck Anora harder than any command. Avaroth was vanishing, and still he refused to make her his cage. Soren turned toward Cedron. What did you do to the thread? Lord Chancellor Cadron Velis had stopped pretending sorrow. His face was colder without it. I severed dependence before it became doctrine. Dependence? Cadron pointed his census staff toward Anora. That girl's bloodline could make ancient dragons answer promises before crowns. Do you understand what that means? A king could command fire, sign treaties, spill royal blood, and still lose his dragon to a promise made in childhood to a border child. The absence fire from the broken lantern moved instead of Avaroth answering. It slid in thin blue streams toward the restored mural and climbed the old stone. Wherever it touched, more hidden details appeared. Young Anora's fingers wrapped in silver thread, young Soren's bloodied palm over hers, young Avaroth flickering at the edge of existence until both children held the vow together. Then another image formed. Cadron, younger and severe, standing before the old Valcrest council. Behind him, a line of Quell men and women knelt with their hands bound in silver cords. Not rebels. Witnesses. A court scribe lifted a black page and read words written in flame. The Quell line carries memory weight beyond royal command. Recommendation: removal from dragon proximity. Public cause: border treason. Anora's knees nearly failed. Border treason. The charge that had destroyed her family. The crime that had turned her from a border daughter into a mercy servant sleeping beside ash bins. Her family had not been erased because they betrayed the throne. They had been erased because dragons might remember through them. Soren stared at the memory, his expression hardening into something almost like hatred, though Anora could not tell whether he hated Cadron, the crown, or himself for standing on both. He turned to her. What does the thread need? Anora laughed once. It was not humor. Not what? She said. Who cut it? Soren's mouth closed. Good. Let him learn the difference between needing her and hearing her. Anora touched the silver thread at her throat. It tightened again, and Avaroth's fading slowed but did not stop. She felt the ancient dragon's weight inside her ribs, not as ownership, not as a bond she had chosen, but as stolen evidence left in her body because the court needed the theft hidden somewhere no noble instrument could measure. She was not the dragon's owner. She was the place the court had hidden what ownership could not command. Soren stepped closer. Anora, if the promise is restored, Avaroth may live. And what becomes of me? The question stopped him. The nobles listened differently now. A moment ago they had called her null. Now they were ready to call her necessary. Anora could feel the danger in both. Soren's face tightened. I do not know. At least that was honest. Cadron's voice sliced between them. She is a dangerous vessel. The thread has latched to her throat because it seeks structure. That does not make her wronged. It makes her usable. Fire gathered around Soren's shoulders. Anora spoke before he could turn anger into protection again. No. Soren stopped. Anora held his gaze. Do not burn him because you are angry now. You stood silent while he used me as proof. You asked me to take another step because you wanted to know how much your dragon needed me. Pain crossed Soren's face. She did not soften. You were a child when you made the promise, she said. You are a king now. Which one will ask me to carry it? The hall seemed to darken around the question. Soren looked at the thread around her throat, then at the mural, then at Avaroth, whose chest had begun to turn translucent at the edges. When he answered, his voice was rough. Neither. Cadron stiffened. Soren walked past Anora. Not to seize the thread, not to touch her. He went to the restored mural and lowered himself to one knee before the image of the two children and the wounded dragon. The court gasped. A dragon king did not kneel before old stone. Soren placed one hand flat against the scraped wall. The crown severed a promise made before witnesses. The crown erased the Quell line to protect the lie that Valcrest blood alone sustained Avaroth. The crown named a child's memory a weakness and called theft loyalty. The dark flame above his brow guttered. Every Valcrest oath ring worn by the council cracked at once. The census scribes cried out as ink flowed backward across their pages. undoing the word mercy wherever it had been written beside Anora's name. Soren's jaw tightened. I name it crime. The mural burned silver. Kydron's face went pala. The mercy clause binding Anora to palace service burst into blue-white ash inside the census ledger. The silver thread loosened from Anora's throat. She sucked in her first full breath since it had wrapped around her. Avaroth's fading stopped, but only for a heartbeat. Then the thread lifted from Anora's skin and stretched across the hall, not toward Soren, not toward Avaroth, but toward the black throne. It pointed beneath it. The obsidian floor cracked open. The Quell chest did not rise like inheritance. It rose like evidence. A sealed iron box emerged from beneath the throne, marked with the erased crest of House Quell and wrapped in dozens of severed silver threads. The first thread lifted by itself, and at its end hung a child's name. Anora had never been allowed to mourn. Her own. The Quell chest did not rise like an inheritance. It rose like evidence. The iron box dragged itself from beneath the black throne, with a sound like buried metal remembering the dark. Dozens of severed silver threads wrapped around it, each one thin as hair and bright as moonlit bone. The erased crest of House Quell had been carved into the lid, then scratched out so violently that the gouges looked like old wounds. Every noble in the Hall of Living Proof suddenly looked interested in forgetting again. Soren Valcrest moved first. Seal it, he ordered. No one obeyed. The census scribes stood frozen with ink still running backward across their pages. The Valcrest oath rings on the counselor's fingers continued to crack, small silver fractures spreading through black metal. Above Soren's brow, the dark flame of the crown flickered lower, as if the throne itself had heard the word crime and did not know how to defend its own shadow. Kydron turned toward the court. That chest contains treason records, Quell conspiracy documents, border lies kept by a fallen line that tried to make dragons answer servants before kings. Anora looked at the severed threads wrapped around the iron. No, she said quietly. You are afraid, because it kept count. The words passed through the hall like cold water. Soren descended from the mural wall and crossed toward the chest. His face had become unreadable again, but not cleanly. Grief still moved under the surface. So did anger. So did need. Anora watched all three carefully. Need was the one she trusted least. Open it, Soren said. A council guard brought a blade. Soren held out his hand and cut his palm across the edge without hesitation. Dragon kings liked blood proof. Courts liked it more. Blood made power look simple, as if truth could be opened by the right vein. Soren pressed his bleeding palm to the Quell crest. Nothing happened. The hall went silent in a different way. Not fear, embarrassment. A Valcrest king could not open Quell evidence. A nobleman whispered, the chest refuses royal blood. Kydron seized the wound. Then it proves it's treason. Anora stepped closer to the chest, but did not touch it. Soren looked at her. Will it open for you? The question was dangerous. Not because of the chest, because of what the court would do with the answer. If it opened beneath her hand, they would call it inheritance. They would dress proof in destiny. They would make her useful in a new way, and pretend the new name was kinder than null-bearer. Anora folded her ash-stained hands in front of her. No. Soren's eyes narrowed. No? Not until you say what it is. Kydron gave a sharp laugh. She bargains with the crown now. Anora did not look at him. She looked only at Soren. You named the theft a crime. Now prove you will not name my usefulness a cure. The sentence struck him. Avaroth stirred behind them, his fading wings still shedding silver ash at the edges. The ancient dragon lowered his head until his breath moved the threads around the chest. His voice came soft, almost too low for the court to hear. Do not bind her to what they cut from me. Soren closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, he turned away from Anora and faced the court. House Quell was wronged, he said. Not suspected, not stained, not unfortunate. Wronged. The crown took their memory, weight, erased their names, and kept their proof beneath my throne. The chest shuddered. The severed threads tightened. Soren's voice roughened. This box is not her inheritance. Anora stepped forward then. She placed one hand on the scratched Quell crest. Not inheritance, she said. Evidence. The iron chest opened. No golden light poured out. No crown waited inside. No hidden royal jewel. No birthright blade, no ancient sign declaring Anora queen. The absence of those things felt like a mercy. Inside lay small bundles of silver thread, each wrapped around a strip of blackened parchment. Some threads were bright, some were nearly gray, some still pulsed faintly, as if a child's hand had held one end and never been allowed to let go. The top parchment unrolled by itself. Kadrin tried to step back. Soren saw it. Stay. The parchment burned silver letters into the air. Quell memory weight transfer record. Subject: Ilian Quell, age 6. Dragon affected. Valcrest line, Western hatchling. Cause for severance: Dragon refused royal command after child promise. Public outcome: child listed under fever ash. Anora's stomach turned. Another parchment rose. Subject: Marith Quell, age 9. Dragon affected. Avaroth, first stabilization. Cause for severance: Dragon returned to child after crown order. Public outcome: border accident. Another. Subject: Anora Quell, age 4. Cause for severance: Dragon would not burn village marked for punishment. Public outcome: never recorded. The names rose one after another, filling the air above the chest. Children, not warriors, not rebels. Children who had stood near dragons, held promises, witnessed bonds, and been cut away whenever dragon memory became inconvenient to royal command. Anora's breath came unevenly. She had not inherited a throne. She had inherited the proof of what thrones had eaten. Kadrin's voice hardened. A kingdom is allowed to survive. Anora turned toward him, not by making children disappear inside its survival. For the first time, the court did not murmur against her. Some faces lowered, others went pale. A few looked angry, but not at Sidrin at the evidence, for forcing them to know. Soren stared at the records with a horror that had sharpened past grief into responsibility. Every Valcrest dragon? Kadrin lifted his chin. Every ancient dragon requires weight. Blood calls them, yes, but blood is unstable. Blood wants conquest, revenge, pride. Memory keeps dragons from becoming myths or monsters. The Quell line made that memory obedient to promise instead of crown. That could not stand. Avaroth's claws flexed against the obsidian. I was not preserved, the dragon said, each word strained by the effort of remaining real. I was edited. Silver ash slipped from his neck. Anora took one step toward him, then stopped herself. Avaroth noticed. His golden eyes softened with pain. You need me, she said. Yes, the dragon answered. The honesty hurt more than pleading would have. Avaroth lowered his massive head until his fading snout nearly touched the floor. But I will not ask you to become the place they hid my obedience. Soren looked between them, his jaw tight. The chest shifted. A thread at the bottom began to glow brighter than the others. It lifted slowly, unwrapping itself from a strip of dark parchment. The air around it turned colder. The absence fire at Anora's feet went still. She knew before it reached the light. Some part of her had known since the chest opened. The parchment unfolded. Subject: Anora Quell, age 5. Dragon affected. Avaroth. Extinction threshold. Cause for severance. Promise made with Prince Soren Valcrest. Status: memory. Weight retained in living subject. Secondary witness: Ilian Quell. Anora went still. Ilian. Her mother's name. The first silver thread fragment inside the chest lifted higher, and at its end hung the name of the woman Anora had never been allowed to mourn. Ilian Quell burned above the chest like a funeral the court had never permitted. Anora stared at her mother's name until the letters blurred, but they did not vanish. They hung in silver fire above the open iron box, brighter than all the other records, as if the chest had waited years for someone to stand close enough to ache. Ilian Quell. Secondary witness. 2 words that turned grief into a legal shape. Anora had been told her mother died during the border seizures, unnamed among traitors, ash scattered with the rest of House Quell. No grave, no cloth, no last words. Only a palace servant's warning not to ask after rebels unless she wanted to join them in the forgotten ground. Now her mother's name rose from beneath the Dragon King's throne, not as rebellion, as evidence. Kadrin Velis's face hardened. Close it. The chest did not close. The severed thread carrying Elowen's name drifted toward Anora, then stopped inches from her hand, trembling as if afraid to touch her without permission. That almost broke her. Even stolen proof had learned caution around her body before the court had. Soren watched the thread with a grief that was not his, but still injured him. Anora, she turned on him so quickly he stopped speaking. Do not make my mother the price of your dragon. The words struck the hall cold. Soren's jaw tightened. He looked at Avaroth, then at the chest, then back at her. I was not going to. You do not know what you were going to do. Her voice shook, but it did not soften. You have spent all night learning what your crown needed from me after your court already took it. He accepted the blow. That was not enough to heal it. Cadron stepped forward, regaining his balance through law. Anora Quell was not murdered. She was processed under memory risk protocol after refusing to surrender a dangerous attachment between her child and the royal dragon. Anora's fingers curled. Processed. A word clean enough to wear gloves. The absence fire at her feet rose, blue and thin, as if the word had offended it. Anora looked down at the open chest. Show what processed means. Cadron's eyes narrowed. You have no authority to command Quell records. No, she said. I have the wound they left behind. The severed thread answered. It touched her palm. Pain went through her, not sharp, not burning, but intimate. The kind of pain that did not attack from outside, it unlocked from within. The air above the chest darkened into a memory. Anora Quell stood in the dragon nursery, younger than Anora had ever known her, with ash-brown hair braided down her back and silver thread wrapped around both wrists. Before her, child Anora slept in the arms of a palace guard, her small face streaked with tears. Young Soren lay unconscious beside wounded Avaroth. Sadrin stood between them, holding a silver severing blade. You will release the child's memory weight, Cadron said in the memory. The crown will preserve her under mercy clause. Anora lifted her chin. Mercy does not begin with taking a child from her mother. Cadron's younger face showed no anger, only certainty. Your daughter has anchored an ancient dragon beyond royal reach. That is not motherhood. That is sedition. She held a promise. She held a weapon. The memory shifted. Anora stepped toward sleeping Anora. The guards pulled the child back. Silver cords tightened around Anora's wrists until blood ran beneath the light. If you cut her from him, Anora said, voice breaking, she will grow up with absence where memory should be. Cadron looked almost sorrowful. Then she will be easier to keep alive. Anora stopped breathing. Easier to keep alive. The phrase was too close to all the other mercies the court had offered her. A servant gown instead of chains, ash work instead of prison, hunger instead of execution. Survival, always offered in pieces small enough to be mistaken for kindness. The memory turned colder. Cadron raised the silver blade. Anora lunged not toward him, not toward Soren, but toward Avaroth. She pressed her bound hands to the fading dragon's brow and spoke directly into the wound where the promise thread had been cut. Remember her gently, Anora whispered. If you cannot keep her, do not consume her. Avaroth in the present lowered his head until his horns nearly touched the floor. A sound moved through his chest. Not a roar. A broken breath. I remember her hands, he said. That was all. No explanation. No ancient law. Only grief from a creature the court had treated like a weapon, and a woman who had asked him not to become one. The memory continued. The silver blade came down. The thread between child Anora and Avaroth snapped. But Anora caught the falling end in her own hands. The nursery filled with light. Cadron shouted. Soren, still unconscious, cried out one word in his sleep. Anora. The adult Soren flinched as if the memory had struck him across the mouth. Anora looked at him. You remembered enough to say my name then. His face tightened. And forgot enough to let them call me nothing now. The words landed harder than rage. Soren did not defend himself. Cadron's voice cut through the memory. Enough. The Quell woman interfered with royal preservation. She chose punishment. The chest answered before Anora could. Anora's record unrolled fully. Subject: Anora Quell. Status: living witness converted to absence custody. Purpose: conceal child anchor, stabilize severed dragon weight, suppress maternal claim. Location: beneath throne root, uncounted. The hall emptied of sound. Living witness: Anora's heart seemed to stop, then return wrong, beneath throne root. Not dead, not buried, uncounted. She looked toward the black throne. The obsidian beneath it cracked again, deeper this time. Silver roots glimmered under the floor, tangled around something far below. Kadrin's composure finally broke. Only a little. Enough. You cannot open that, he said. Anora turned to him. Because my mother is there? Because she is no longer only your mother. His voice sharpened. She is part of the structure keeping Avaroth from complete collapse. Remove her, and the dragon may vanish before dawn. The court shifted in horror. Avaroth's wing flickered violently, silver ash spilling into the air. Soren stepped toward the throne, then stopped. This time, he stopped before Anora had to tell him. He looked at her. I will not order you. Good, she said, though the word hurt. The silver thread in her hand tightened, pulling gently toward the cracked floor. Anora looked at Avaroth. The ancient dragon's great eye met hers. He was vanishing. Everyone could see it now. His shoulder dimmed, his reflection was gone. His breath came with silver ash instead of smoke. Yet when he spoke, his voice carried no command. Do not go below for me. Anora's throat closed. Kadrin laughed softly. Noble. Pointless. She will go because the Quell line was bred to hold what dragons cannot bear. Anora looked at the chest, the threads, the records of children made useful by disappearance. Then she lifted Elowen's thread and wrapped it around her own wrist, not as obedience, but as decision. No, she said. I will go because she is my mother. The floor beneath the throne split open. A staircase of silver-black root descended into darkness. From far below, a woman's voice rose, weak and shaking, but alive. Anora? The thread around Anora's wrist pulled tight, and Avaroth began to disappear faster. Silver ash began falling from Avaroth in sheets. Not smoke, not scales. Pieces of him. The great dragon did not roar as his shoulder blurred into the air. He lowered himself to the obsidian floor as if kneeling could make disappearance less violent. Nobles fled backward from the spreading ash, dragging silk hems and jeweled cloaks away from the place where the last ancient dragon of Valcrest blood was coming apart in front of them. Anora did not run to him. That hurt more than running would have. She felt Avaroth's pain through the thread at her wrist, not as a command, but as pressure, an ancient creature trying not to pull on the girl who had already been used as a knot too many times. Soren moved toward the dragon, then toward Anora, then stopped between both needs, as if the hall had split him open. Kadrin saw the hesitation and struck at it. Your Majesty, the throne root is sealed under crown law. If she opens it incorrectly, Avaroth may collapse entirely. Anora turned toward him. You mean if I open it without you controlling the story? His expression hardened. The stairs beneath the throne descended into darkness, silver-black roots twisting along the walls like veins under glass. From below, the weak voice came again. Anora. Not loud, not dramatic. Alive. The sound passed through Anora like a hand reaching from a room she had stopped believing existed. Soren stepped closer. I will go with you. Anora looked at him. The hall held its breath, waiting for the romance of it. The king descending beside the wronged girl, danger forging tenderness before truth finished bleeding. Anora gave them none of that. You may walk behind me, she said. Not because you protect me, because you owe witness. Soren accepted it without flinching, but something in his jaw tightened. Good. Let the crown learn how obedience felt when it was not worship. Avaroth's fading breath moved across the floor. Leave me, the dragon said. The words were so soft that only Anora, Soren, and the roots seemed to hear them. Anora looked back. Avaroth's golden eye remained fixed on her, dimmer now, but still unbearably alive. If the price is binding her, he said, leave me. For one moment, the hall forgot he was a weapon. He sounded like something old and frightened, trying to be honorable before death made honor useless. Anora's throat tightened. I am not going below for you. Avaroth closed his eye. I know. Anora turned and stepped onto the first root stair. The silver thread around her wrist warmed, not pulling now, only guiding. Soren followed 2 steps behind. Kadrin moved as if to come after them, but the Quell chest snapped shut with a sound like judgment. Severed threads whipped from its iron sides and barred his path. Kadrin's eyes flashed. Anora, That vault contains records your mother was never meant to survive remembering. She paused. Then she deserves to decide what memory does to her. The stairway swallowed the light of the hall. Below the throne, Dracarin did not feel like a palace. It felt like something older had been buried and forced to serve as foundation. The walls were not stone, not fully. Obsidian roots coiled through black earth, threaded with silver veins. Here and there, names had been carved into the root flesh and scraped away before the letters could finish becoming permanent. Anora touched one. A child's cry passed through her fingertip. She pulled back. Soren saw it. Quell names? Not only Quell. The root beside her flickered, revealing half a word. Valcrest. Then another. Promise. Then the marks vanished. Soren's face darkened. The throne ate its own records. No, Anora said. Someone fed them to it. The passage opened into a chamber beneath the throne. At its center stood a woman woven into living silver-black roots. Elowen Quell was thinner than memory should allow. Her ash-brown hair had gone almost white. Her wrists were bound, not with chains, but with promise thread. Dozens of silver strands passing through her skin into the roots around her. Her eyes, when they opened, were the same dark gray as Anora's. For a moment, neither moved. Then Elowen smiled. A small smile. Broken at the edges. Real. My little ember. Anora crossed the chamber before fear could stop her. She reached for her mother, then stopped inches away. After everything the court had done with touching, taking, binding, stabilizing, preserving, she could not make her own love another force. Elowen saw that. Tears filled her eyes. You may. Anora touched her mother's hand. The thread around her wrist flared silver. Above them, Avaroth gave a distant, shaking breath. The chamber dimmed. Dust fell from the roots. Soren looked upward. He is fading faster. Elowen's gaze moved to him. No hatred appeared in her face. That made it worse. You have your father's eyes, she whispered, and your mother's fear of what the court calls necessary. Soren bowed his head. Lady Quell, do not use titles down here, Elowen said. Titles were how they taught the roots to swallow names. Anora turned to her mother. What are you holding? Elowen's fingers tightened around hers. Not power, not a throne, not a claim. Her voice weakened, but the roots leaned toward it. I am holding the pieces they cut from Avaroth each time they made him obey against memory. Soren went still. Elowen continued. Every severed Quell child held one weight. Every time the crown wanted dragonfire without promise, they cut the keeper away and stored the weight below the throne. Your thread was different. You were not only holding memory, you were holding his refusal to become a royal weapon. Anora felt the words settle inside her like grief finding a shape. Kadrin had not feared her because she could command Avaroth. He had feared her because through her, Avaroth might refuse command. Soren looked at the roots binding Elowen. If we return the weights? Elowen's eyes closed briefly. Avaroth will remember everything at once. And live? Perhaps. Anora heard the hidden blade in that word. Perhaps, she repeated. Elowen opened her eyes. Or the memory of every forced obedience will tear him apart before he can become whole. The chamber shook. From above, nobles screamed. A section of the ceiling blurred into silver ash, then reformed, then blurred again. Soren's voice lowered. What is the other choice? Elowen looked at Anora. Anora already knew. The living anchor keeps holding what was cut. Soren said no. Too fast. Too fierce. Anora looked at him. Do not make refusal sound noble when you still need the answer. His face tightened. But he did not argue. She turned back to Elowen. What do you need from me? Elowen's hand trembled around hers. Not your body, not your throat, not your life. She looked toward Soren. A king must return what kings hid. A dragon must choose memory over obedience. And you, Anora, must decide whether the promise becomes a chain again or a truth with witnesses. The roots behind Elowen split open. A black mirror appeared inside the living wood, its surface filled with silver ash. In it, Anora saw the hall above. Avaroth almost translucent, Kadrin standing before the Quell chest, a severed thread burning in his hand. Anora's blood went cold. Kadrin had found a way through. He lifted the burning thread to the dark flame above the throne. Elowen gasped. No. Soren drew his sword. Anora stared into the mirror as Kadrin spoke to the entire court above. If the promise makes her necessary, he said, then let the promise be rewritten. The burning thread snapped, and Avaroth vanished from the mirror. The mirror did not go dark. It went dragonless. The black surface inside the throne root still showed the hall of living proof above them. Nobles scattering, census scribes clutching pages that wrote and unwrote themselves, the Quell chest trembling beneath the throne, and Kadrin Velis standing with a burning silver thread in his hand. But the place where Avaroth had stood was empty. Notfallen, Nutzlein. Empty in the way a name became empty after someone scraped it from stone. Anora felt the absence of him behind her ribs, a hollow space where his hidden weight had burned. Elowin's fingers tightened around her hand. He has been uncounted. Soren went still. What does that mean? There are deaths that leave bodies, Elowin said. There are erasures that leave records. This is older. If Kadrin finishes rewriting the promise, the world will stop making room for Avaroth at all. Above them, Kadrin lifted the burning thread toward the dark flame over the throne. A royal dragon cannot depend on servant memory, he declared. I invoke correction of existential bond. Words formed in the air. Avaroth of Valcrest exists by crown blood alone. No Quell witness required. No child promise recognized. No theft recorded. Anora looked at Soren. Call him. His eyes cut to her. Command him, she said. If Valcrest blood alone holds him, call him back. Pain moved across Soren's face, but he turned toward the mirror. Avaroth. Nothing answered. No ripple. No ash. No golden eye. Soren's jaw tightened. Avaroth. Still nothing. Anora watched the silence strike him harder than any blade. He was never only yours. Soren looked back at her. I know that now. Knowing after loss is not the same as respecting before need. He did not defend himself. Good. She needed him honest, not softened. The roots around Elowin tightened. Her breath caught, but she lifted one trembling hand before Anora could reach for her. Ask the roots, Elowin whispered. Not like a queen, not like an heir, like evidence. Anora pressed her palm to a black root where a Quell name had been scraped away. What did you do with him? The root split beneath her hand. Blue absence fire crawled out and rode across the wood. Uncounted things fall into the null depth before final forgetting. Soren stepped closer. Where is that? Elowin's voice weakened. Beneath census law. Deeper than the throne root. Where the court sends. Almost. Things before records are changed. Anora thought of the noble infant whose scales had vanished at dawn, the broken null lantern, the blue fire that did not burn her because it recognized something in her the court had made unmeasurable. The lantern came from there, she said. Elowin nodded. And so did the part of you they could not classify. Above, Kadrin's false record brightened. The words "no theft recorded" began sinking toward the throne seal. Anora turned to Soren. If I go into the null depth, the court will call me gone. I will follow. No. His face tightened. She stepped closer. Close enough for the silver root light to catch the gold in his eyes. Do not follow me because you need your dragon. Do not follow me because the girl you forgot is useful again. If you come as witness, not king. The chamber trembled. Soren slowly reached up and removed the dark flame crown from above his brow. The flame resisted. It clung to him like rule refusing to be set down. When he pulled it free, it burned his hands. Anora did not tell him to stop. Some pain was not payment. Some pain was proof that a man had finally touched the thing that had hurt others in his name. Soren placed the crown on the root floor between them. I come as witness, he said. The roots opened. Not beneath him. Beneath Anora, a stairway of blue absence fire unfolded downward, cold and silent, its edges darker than night. Elowin gripped Anora's wrist. If the null depth offers you a name, do not take it. Anora swallowed. Why? Because it may offer the name they wanted you to become. From the mirror above, Kadrin's voice sharpened. Seal the corrected record. The false words struck the throne flame. Anora stepped onto the first stair. Cold swallowed her foot without burning. Behind her, Soren lifted no sword. He gave no command. He only took the broken end of Elowin's thread and held it like witness. Anora descended. The deeper she went, the quieter the palace became, until even Kydron's voice faded. Then something breathed back. In the dark below, two golden eyes opened. Not Avaroth's whole body, only the last part of him the world had not yet forgotten. A voice made of ash and distance spoke from the null depth. Do not let them give you my absence as a name. The null depth did not feel like a place. It felt like a decision the world had made and then buried. Anora descended the blue steps with one hand against the cold wall of darkness, though there was no wall, only absence shaped kindly enough to let her pretend she had something to hold. Above her, the palace had faded into silence. Below her, the two golden eyes waited, dim as stars seen through smoke. Not Avaroth's body, not his wings. Only the part of him the court had not finished teaching the world to forget. The stairs ended on nothing. Anora stepped forward anyway. Cold rose around her ankles, then her knees, then her chest. It did not drown her. It measured her. Not the way the census lantern had measured her, cruel and official, but the way a grave measures a name before deciding whether to keep it. Shapes drifted in the dark. A cradle with no child in it. A crown with no head beneath it. A small dragon scale turning transparent before it touched the ground. Names floated past her in blue-white fragments, each one almost readable before fading. Almost born. Almost counted. Almost mourned. Anora understood then why the null lantern had not burned her. Part of her had been recorded here long ago. Avaroth's eyes lowered. You should not have come. His voice was weaker than before. And that weakness frightened her more than his sighs ever had. I came for evidence, Anora said. A faint warmth moved through the dark. Not laughter. Recognition. Then ask like evidence. Anora looked around at the drifting names. The null depth wanted to make everything soft at the edges. It wanted her to forget the difference between rescue and use, between need and command, between a girl and the place a kingdom hid its crimes. She pressed her hand to her ribs, where the promise fire still burned. What did they give me? The dark answered. Blue absence fire gathered into a strip of floating record. Anora Quell. Classification. Living absence. Function. Containment of severed dragon. Weight. Permitted identity. No beast, no measure, no claim. Correction name prepared. Avaroth's absence. Anora went cold. Not from the depth, from recognition. Eloin had warned her. If the null depth offers you a name, do not take it. Avaroth's eyes dimmed. They meant to make you my lack. The words struck harder than any insult the court had ever given her. Beastless. Null bearer. No measure. All of it had been preparation. If she accepted the name they made for her, she could hold the wound perfectly. Avaroth's absence would have a body. The court could return with a dragon-shaped myth and a girl-shaped silence. Soren could have his ancient beast back, and Anora would become the missing space that made him whole. No. Her breath shook. No, she said aloud. I am not your absence. The dark shuddered. Above, far away, Kydron's voice bled through the depth like ink through water. Seal the corrected record. The false declaration pressed downward. Avaroth of Valcrest exists by crown blood alone. The golden eyes flickered. Anora felt him slipping again. Not dying. Being rewritten out from under himself. She turned toward the unseen sky. Soren. For a moment nothing answered. Then a thread of silver light pierced the dark, thin and trembling. At its end, Soren's voice came through, rough with effort. I am here. Not command. Witness. Anora closed her eyes. Tell the hall what you see. Silence above. Then Soren's voice, louder now, carried through the roots and into the court above. I see the name prepared for her. Avaroth's absence. I see the crown meant to return my dragon by turning Anora Quell into the shape of what we stole. The null depth trembled. Avaroth's eyes brightened by a fraction. Anora asked the next question before fear could swallow her. What was Avaroth before Valcrest blood named him royal? The dark resisted. Then the drifting records split open. A memory formed around her, not painted on a wall, not projected in fire, but lived in absence. A younger world. A red sky. Avaroth not standing behind a throne, but circling above a field of children who held silver threads in their hands. Quell children. Valcrest children, servant children, border children. No ranks yet, no crown flame. Only promises held in many small palms, teaching the ancient dragon where to land without crushing what trusted him. Avaroth had not been owned. He had been witnessed. The memory shifted. First crown, first throne, first law that said a dragon must answer blood before promise. Avaroth refusing to burn a village that had surrendered. A Quell child standing between dragonfire and command. A Valcrest king ordering the memory cut. Anora opened her eyes. She was shaking. She was not the dragon's hidden power. She was the witness line the crown had tried to remove, because witnesses made obedience incomplete. She lifted her face towards Soren's thread. "Say it." His voice came through the dark. Avaroth was not born royal property. The depth cracked. Above, the court roared in shock. Soren continued, each word sounding like it cost him something real. He was witnessed into the world by promises. The crown stole those witnesses and called ownership bloodright. Avaroth made a sound that might have been pain. Or relief. The false declaration above began to burn at the edges. Kydron shouted something Anora could not hear clearly. The dark around her shifted violently. The null depth did not like losing what it had been fed. Names rushed toward Anora, not attacking, pleading. The noble infant. The vanished Quell children. Unrecorded servants. Half-born dragons. Almost things that had waited in the dark with no witness to pull them back. For one terrifying moment, Anora felt all of them reaching. Not into her, toward her, because she had asked and been answered. "No," she whispered, though tears blurred the gold eyes before her. "I cannot carry all of you." The names stopped. The honesty held them back. Avaroth's gaze softened. "Then do not carry," he said. "Count." Anora understood. She did not need to become the room, she needed to open the record. She knelt in the blue absence fire and pressed both hands to the dark beneath her. "I count Avaroth," she said. "Not as crown property, not as Valcrest weapon, as witnessed being." A golden spark flared. "I count the Quell children cut from him." More sparks? "I count the erased infants, the almost born, the names removed before morning." The null depth shook. Above, Soren's voice echoed hers, carrying each count into the hall, not adding royal authority, giving witness to hers. The golden eyes grew brighter. A shape began to form around them. Horn, jaw, wing shadow. Avaroth was returning, but not to the throne. To the record. Then Kydron's voice cut through the dark, clear and furious. "If she counts the uncounted, then count her where she belongs." A black seal dropped from above like a falling star. It struck the blue fire before Anora and opened into an official record. Anora Quell. Status correction. Never born. The null depth went still, and Anora's hands began to disappear. The black seal ate the edges of Anora's fingers first. Not with pain. With denial. Her skin did not burn, tear, or bleed. It simply thinned into blue-gray mist, as if the null depth had begun believing the new record before her own body could argue. The official words hung before her in cold black fire. Anora Quell. Status correction. Never born. The darkness around her listened. That was the horror of it. The null depth did not hate her. It obeyed records. It had been built to receive what the court decided did not count, and Kydron had just given it the cleanest command of all. Never born. If she had never been born, no one had stolen her. No promise had used her. No mother had lost her. No dragon had been anchored through her. No king had forgotten her. No crime needed a name. Her wrists began to fade. Above, through the silver witness thread, Soren's voice tore across the hall. "Anora!" The sound reached her, but it did not hold her. Need was not evidence. Anora forced herself to breathe. She looked at the black seal, at the disappearing edges of her own hands, at the golden fragments of Avaroth still struggling to take shape in the dark. She could not fight the record with power. She had no beast to unleash, no royal blood to burn, no crown to command the world to remember her. So she asked the only question that still belonged to her. Who used the girl who was never born? The null depth shuddered. The black seal flickered. Records did not like contradiction. Courts could lie, but law was lazier than cruelty. It preferred a clean shape. If Anora had never existed, then every document that had used her body, her absence, her promise, and her memory weight became impossible. Blue fire crawled beneath the black seal. The first answer appeared. Anora Quell, age 5. Memory weight retained in living subject. The word living flared. Her fading slowed. Anora lifted what remained of her hands and pressed them into the dark floor. Who took her from her mother? Another record burned open. Child removed under mercy clause. Custody transferred to palace service. Who named her null bearer? Royal Beast Census office. Instrument classification. No measure. Who placed her beneath the throne records? Lord Chancellor Cadron Velis. Authorization. Crown preservation. The black seal cracked. Above, Soren's voice repeated each line to the hall, not as kingly interpretation, but as witness. The records used her. The court named her. The throne kept her. A person cannot be never born. After a kingdom has spent her life, the court above erupted. Cadron's voice cut through it. Do not let him speak. He is compromised by dragon. Loss. Anora's left hand returned, trembling and cold. But the seal did not break fully. A deeper line appeared beneath Cadron's correction. Birth record removed. Maternal witness unavailable. Childhood witness erased. Dragon witness uncounted. Status correction may stand. Anora's breath caught. There it was. The court had not merely declared her nothing. It had removed every witness who could prove otherwise. Her mother had been buried beneath the throne root. Soren's memory had been cut. Avaroth had been uncounted. Her family records had been sealed under iron. A disappearance built from many smaller disappearances. Then Elowin's voice rose through the thread. Weak. Alive. Furious. I witnessed her birth. The null depth brightened. Anora closed her eyes. Above, the roots must have carried her mother's voice into the hall, because the court went silent enough for every word to descend. Anora Quell, mother of Anora Quell, gives witness. She was born during the ash rain after the eastern road burned. She cried before she opened her eyes. She gripped my finger before the midwife cut the cord. She lived. The black seal split down the center. Anora's arms returned. But Cadron laughed. One mother's grief is not legal record. Soren's answer came low. Then hear mine. Anora opened her eyes. The silver thread between them tightened. Soren's memory pushed through it, not complete, not clean, but chosen. A boy in a dragon nursery. A wounded ancient dragon flickering at the edges. A little girl with ash on her cheek, scolding a prince because he was crying too loudly and frightening the dragon. Young Soren's voice formed through the depth. Your name is Anora, the child said. That means dawn flame. Adult Soren inhaled sharply above. I witnessed her, he said to the court. Before they cut the promise from me. Before they taught me to forget. I witnessed Anora Quell. The black seal broke again. Anora's feet returned against the blue fire. Only one line remained. Dragon witness uncounted. The golden eyes in the dark dimmed. Avaroth's voice came with effort. If I count you, the court may bind you to me again. Anora looked at the almost shape of him. Horn, wing, eye, grief. You will not bind me. No. Then count what you know. The dragon bowed his half-formed head. I witnessed Anora Quell, Avaroth said, not as my owner, not as my vessel, as the child who held a promise when crowns chose command, as the witness who carried what blood tried to forget, as herself. The last line of the black seal shattered. The null depth screamed, not in defeat, in correction. Records flew open around Anora in a storm of blue fire. Names returned to almost things, the noble infant's cradle filled with a silver spark. Quell children appeared as threads of light, not alive, not erased, but counted. Avaroth's body formed around his golden eyes, vast and wounded, his wings unfolding from absence, as if the world was remembering how much space he required. Above, Cadron shouted, If she is counted, then the old bond returns. Anora felt the danger before she saw it. Every silver thread in the null depth turned toward her. Not attacking, offering. Avaroth could return fully if she accepted them. All the memory weight, all the severed promises, every piece of dragon existence the crown had hidden through generations. She could hold it. The court had made her for that, and that was why she refused. I count them, Anora said, but I do not carry them. The thread stopped. Avaroth's eye widened. Anora lifted her face toward the hall above. Soren, if you want him back, you do not take the weight from me. You give the weight back to the world. Soren understood. The dark flame crown he had left on the root floor flared above through the witness thread. The throne groaned. The hall of living proof shook, as if the palace were trying to reject its own foundation. Soren's voice rang through both worlds. Let every severed promise be recorded outside the crown. The Quell chest burst open above. Its threads flew upward, not into Anora, not into Soren, not into Avaroth, but into the broken mirrors of the hall. Each mirror caught one promise. Each shard became a witness. Kadrin screamed, "No!" Avaroth's shape solidified in the null depth. For one breath, Anora thought they had won. Then the throne answered. A black root shot from the darkness beneath her and wrapped around her ankle. Kadrin's final law burned across the depth. If the witness will not carry the dragon, the witness will remain below. The blue stairway collapsed behind her, and Anora fell deeper into the null depth as Avaroth rose without her. Avaroth returned to the world without Anora. His black-silver body tore upward through the broken mirrors of the Hall of Living Proof, wings unfolding from blue absence fire, golden eyes burning with the pain of being remembered too late. Nobles fell to their knees. The throne shook. The dark flame above it bent toward the dragon like a master calling its weapon home. Avaroth did not land. He looked down at the empty place where Anora should have risen with him. Below, the null depth closed around her. The black root around Anora's ankle dragged her deeper into the blue dark, farther from the witness thread, farther from every restored name. Her body blurred at the edges again, not dying, not burning, but being stored. The law had restored the dragon and left the witness beneath. Kadrin's voice rang from above. The kingdom survives. Anora dug her fingers into the cold fire. It slipped through her hands. She almost laughed, because even after everything, the court still believed survival meant someone else had to disappear quietly. Then Soren's voice cut through the dark. No, it was not command. It was refusal. In the hall above, Soren stood before the black throne with burned hands and no crown. Kadrin turned on him. Your dragon has returned. Do not ruin the kingdom for a servant girl. Soren looked at Avaroth. The ancient dragon trembled in the air, real again but refusing the throne's pull. Avaroth lowered his head. I will not exist on top of her disappearance. The hall went silent. Soren placed both hands on the obsidian throne. Then Valcrest authority will answer for what fed it. Gaidran lunged. Stop him. No one moved. Soren spoke into the stone. I name Anora Quell, living witness, not vessel, not anchor, not absence, not cure. I release every promise held beneath the throne from royal ownership. The throne cracked. The black root around Anora's ankle loosened. Soren's voice reached deeper. Anora, I will not ask you to carry what my crown cut away. I will not ask your memory to repair my blood. I ask only to witness you come back. For the first time, the null depth did not pull. It waited. Anora pressed one hand to her ribs, where the promise fire still burned. I come back counted, she whispered. Not owned. Blue absence fire opened beneath her. Silver-black roots lifted her through the dark and burst from the floor before the throne. Anora emerged barefoot, bruised and breathing hard, with the dead law falling from her ankle in broken ash. Soren moved toward her, then stopped. Even now, he remembered not to claim what had just returned. Anora stood on her own feet. Avaroth lowered his massive head beside her. He did not bow. He did not demand. He waited. Only when Anora chose to touch his scarred snout did the dragon close his eyes. Around them, the Hall of Living Proof rewrote itself. No measure became witness concealed. Beastless became made unreachable. Mercy clause became unlawful possession. Border treason became crown fabrication. The Quell chest opened fully, releasing its severed threads into the shattered mirrors until every restored promise had a witness outside the throne. Kadrin stood alone in the silver light, A kingdom cannot survive if every hidden thing is named, he said. Anora looked at him. Then maybe it was not survival? Maybe it was digestion. Soren's voice turned cold. Cadron Velis, you will not be hidden in death. You will stand here while every record you buried is read aloud. Every family will hear what was taken. Every law written from Quell erasure will break in public. Cadron's eyes moved to Anora. And when the dragon needs weight again? Anora answered before Soren could. A witness, she said. When I choose. Avaroth opened one golden eye. And I will learn to remain real without making her my cage. That was the final fracture. Not in the throne, in the old order. By dawn, the broken mirrors had been set into the hall as witness shards, each holding a restored name. The null lantern's blue fire burned at the center, no longer measuring who failed to exist, but revealing who had been made absent by force. Anora stood before the restored mural of 2 children and a wounded dragon. Soren approached without crown, without flame, without the throne between them. I remember more now, he said. Memory is not apology, Anora answered. No, he said, but it is where I begin. He held out the original silver promise thread. It no longer circled her throat. It no longer vanished into a crown. I will not put it back on you, he said. Anora looked at the thread. Then she took one end. This time the other end stretched into the mirrors, the records, Avaroth's steady breath, and every restored name watching from silver glass. A promise with witnesses. A promise no longer hungry for one girl. Soren's hand hovered near hers. May I stand beside you? The court waited for surrender. Anora gave them terms. Beside, she said. Never over the place you forgot me. Soren bowed his head. Beside. Only then did she let his fingers touch hers. Behind them, Avaroth spread his wings around the restored mural, not to hide it, but to guard it from ever being scraped smooth again. And when dawn entered the shattered glass dome, Anora Quell was no longer the girl with no measure. She was the witness the world had to make room for.